Say face. But Shannon Everett should have been standing up there instead of Todd Spencer from OIDA, rubbing shoulders with the Texas Trucking Association, which is the ATA, which we know the ATA fought the non-English bill up in Arkansas. So it's what it is these people trying to save face, right? So if you watch the end of it, when Todd Spencer was speaking, he lost his notes.
Friends, if you listen to this on the recording down the wire, appreciate it. Thanks for your feedback as always. And I hope everybody's having a great day. We got a hard stop on this one at 1:30 Eastern my time. So I got 11:45 right now. So you've heard about this whole one big beautiful bill that the president's been talking about for the better part of his administration. And I think that's excellent because I have the link if you guys want it. I can hook you up with it. I have the PDF. It's 47 pages of what I have, and this is from the Ways and Means Committee summary of it. Okay, so this is really the best way to get a flavor of what's in it and a flavor of what it's going to have, what it's going to mean to all of us, right? The best way of describing this bill, guys, because after reading these 47 pages last night, or most of it, I like that the president has branded it one big beautiful bill. But in the 72 hours or so we have left, because the idea is for the House to pass this before Memorial Day, before the 3-day weekend here we got coming up, before it goes to the Senate, they should really start calling this a tax cut bill, because again, if you look at the summary, it's 70% of it's a tax cut, guys. In one form or another, it's also eliminating a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse on Capitol Hill yesterday. Trump when he was with Mike Johnson and some leaders in the House, he was talking about that component, and we'll get into that. That's mostly in regards to, from what I read, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. There are illegal aliens on those programs, meaning that's money we're shelling out for, a lot of people that should not be on these entitlements. And so when there's less spending, that is a good thing when you're eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. So there's kind of like a Doge component to this bill, if you will, and I'll get into that. So I'm going to try and break it down without boring you guys, and then I'll open it up for anybody who wants to talk about it. I got a lot of good stuff to put up in the nest. Where to begin is the question. I think the best way of looking at this is, let me just give you like some bullet points on the major things in this, the stuff you would care about, all right, and in no particular order, really. But let me get that going first, and then we'll continue. So do you remember how I said a few minutes ago that you really got to look at this bill as like a big tax cut, basically, right? What do I mean by that? Well, Americans that are making $200,000 or less are going to get a benefit, whether you're a W-2 wages employee, or you're a small business person like me and you have an LLC or an S corp. There's savings in it for us, but really, who's getting the biggest tax break is people who need it, and that is our people who have 20,000 to 80,000 gross salary a year. So really, you can't get more middle class than that range, right? They're going to get the biggest benefit of it. So let me just give you the bits and pieces here. All right, I'm going to try and go in an order that makes sense. So let me start with the Medicaid and what have you, because I just mentioned that. So it strips down undocumented migrants, illegals, basically, from Medicaid. but at the same time, it boosts DHS funding, okay, for border protection. Okay, so that stuff is in there. All right, so you're seeing a regression in the money we're shelling out in the fraudulent Social Security, Medicaid accounts. All right, so illegals will be kicked off this program, kicked off those programs. The one thing I see in this too is there's a lot of federalism in this, guys. This bill kind of puts in the lap of the individual states. No more, federal oversight because it's a federal program, but really the states have to start being more active in scrutinizing the residents of each state, whether they're citizens or illegals. I can't even believe we have to, we have to put illegals, but they're a big bucket now in this country, regardless of what state you're in. You got to toss illegals. You guys need to have some oversight on the state level. You can't just say, "Well, it's Social Security, that's Washington. Well, it's Medicaid, that's Washington." So there is some impetus on the states to kind of get their shit together within the number of illegals they have and the potential fraud they might have in these entitlement programs. The fact that it's in a big spending bill like this, guys, means that it is an exorbitant amount of money. So this is a good thing. So there's going to be tighter, but I would say kind of that would be a big legal deterrence to people thinking about the non-violent criminals that just want to come over here and get on the gravy train. There's going to be less incentive for illegals to come over here when entitlements are shut off. It's very easy for them to go into a state like Massachusetts, New York, Illinois, California, and get on these programs and bankrupt. Either bankrupt the state with their resources, or, like I said, you steal a social security number, fraud, right? And you could be collecting social security checks of a deceased naturalized citizen. And that's not like an outlier, guys. There's a lot of that. You don't need me to tell you this shit. You know that. So that's being taken care of. Um, there's also some fiscal decentralization, I think, where like SNAP, Medicaid, they're going to have tougher regulations and eligibility checks on that. So I think even Health and Human Services is getting involved, where Secretary Kennedy wants people who are receiving SNAP or food assistance to work at least part time, right? And on top of that, you can't buy soda with whatever stipends you're going to get. So again, this is eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, or basically overspending, right? People should be eating less. We have an obesity problem in this country. Rich people, middle class people, poor people, people that are on government subsidy or state aid, they need to be eating less food. All right, too many fat fucks out there, of all economic classes. Therefore, this is a good thing. Uh, let's see. So let's get to defense. Okay, that's part of this bill as well. So what's going hand in hand with our defense spending is a lot of these new either drones, weapons and equipment, et cetera, are going to be made in America. You probably heard the Golden Dome announcement yesterday. That's in this. I won't get into that because that's kind of a whole separate space you could do on it. But the I think 250 billion was the sum that's in this bill for the Golden Dome, right? So basically, protection, aeronautical protection, naval, land, air, space, right? You got to throw space into the mix now. We got Space Force, et cetera. So you've got that situation. So I'm sorry, $200 billion boost for U.S. only defense procurement paired with tax credits for domestically assembled vehicles. So that might mean if Ford GM Chrysler is making a military or a Homeland Security or something like that vehicle, they would get a tax incentive for basically making these vehicles for the DoD, is how I'm reading this. When the Senate puts in their bit, guys, there's going to be a whole other version, but I would say 75% of this is going to remain in some form. The Senate will do their own language. So this is kind of, the rough draft, right? Sloppy copy, as we called it in junior high. So it's going to be modified a little bit. Chances are sooner rather than later. So we'll get into that. So this is kind of a dual play. So it's getting the national security tied into our domestic onshoring of the supply chains. Okay, so it's like it's like a made in America uh, economic boost, right? So because it's 200 billion's a lot, and there's going to be more coming. I think the Senate's going to add even more to that. I put salt in the title too because I just saw a tweet from Zero Hedge about 3 hours ago that Speaker Johnson is going to deliver up to 40,000 a year in salt deductions. That's a big piece. Maybe out like hour number two, I'll get into that because even though I'm not in a blue state, my state has very high property tax because it's really our only tax, and a lot of people in my area, even though they're not Democrats, they still like the salt tax because they live in expensive houses and they don't get a lot of deductions. And I'm kind of agnostic on the salt tax. I'll get into that. I really hope somebody who's like some of you blue state Republicans will pop up here and tell me because it seems to be a real hair across the ass of the New York Assembly or the California Republicans and the Jersey Republicans. They really touchy with this salt tax. I understand why. I don't know why it needs to be just on principle of finances, why it needs to be part of this bill, but it's horse trading, and we'll get into that. So, file away salt tax for a little while. Federalizing AI, and this so the bill is going to free state level AI rules for 10 years and injects 500 million, which isn't really a lot, honestly, in my opinion, into federal IT upgrades using commercial AI. So it's going to position us as the unified AI test bed or bench test country for concentrating standards, data, and scale advantages. Is how I'm reading this. We'll see. And I have the PDF in front of me. I'm trying not to read it verbatim because it's very dry and it's not going to resonate with a lot of you, I think. All right. All right. So the next cluster of notes I had here was the salt cap. So why don't we pivot into that? All right. So let me give you a definition of what the salt tax is. Like I said, if you're a coastal elite in here, you're definitely familiar with it. So salt tax stands for state and local tax, and it is a deduction that permits the taxpayer, when you're itemizing your federal taxes, to deduct certain taxes paid to state and local governments, i.e., property tax. So this is a blue state issue, guys, because in rural America, in theory, houses are cheaper. Hence, if you're in rural Missouri and your house is, $120,000, you're not going to have a $30,000 a year property tax bill, obviously, right? You're going to have a fraction of that, you know. So this, however, is a big deal for people that are in the blue states. And I put out a post this morning. I'm going to try and wing it off the top of my head because I don't have it in front of me. Is these are the states that benefit, and I think I have the first five in order of the salt tax: California, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, uh, Connecticut. So you've got some smaller states in there: Connecticut, Virginia, Washington State. No surprise there. And the only red state that's on the list is Utah. And I think that was ranked number 9. So Utah is, those ski chalets are not cheap, huh? In Salt Lake and Provo. So wherever you have expensive houses and Democrats in power, salt tax is a vital issue. Now, here's the thing. Evidently, this is going to be in the bill. So my argument against it is kind of moot right now, but I got to give you guys chocolate and vanilla here, or like devil's advocate, right? So my theory on the salt tax is I'm not really a fan of any tax, but I can tell you, living in remember, I'm not a libertarian. So you're not, many of you will not be happy with how I feel about this. If you live in a blue state, and I own a property in a blue state that has all these taxes, it's not my primary residence, but I own a house in Massachusetts in addition to where I am now. So trust me, I'm very sympathetic to high property tax in poorly mismanaged states. Now, you've probably heard Congressman Mike Lawler from New York, and I think it's David Valadao from California. They're kind of rhinos that are in, obviously very Democrat areas. They're like the token Republicans that get elected, right? So for them, it's very important. They really can't bring home the bacon because, nothing that the Trump Congresses are going to do is going to bring jobs to like shithole blue state cities like Philadelphia, the Bronx, Watts in Los Angeles. So they're off the table. Like Raytheon is not going to be opening up a factory with American workers, right? Uh, in Long Beach, California, or San Francisco. So, and ditto the Bronx, ditto Brooklyn, ditto Philly. Okay. So they're kind of at a disadvantage. If you're a Republican congressman with Democrat constituents, you really can't bring home the pork to your home state. And even if you did, because there's so many partisan Democrats in these areas, it wouldn't be appreciated. Okay. So this is a big thing for them. So Mike Lawler, he's the most vocal on it. He's a younger guy, probably younger than me, who's in Congress. So I would say he's 40, and in Congress, that's a baby. So, but he's very, very particular about this salt tax because it's the one thing he can bring home to his constituents because they've had these deductions since 2017 in the state of New York, is my understanding. All right, they like them. A lot of Democrats I work for as customers, they don't like Trump anyway. They're going to hate him even more if this salt tax goes away. But here's my macro take on salt tax. Those of you in blue states, I'm sympathetic. You need to start voting your way out of it. You need better governance at a state level. This isn't really about your federal congressman per se. You need to start electing better state senators and better state representatives at the state legislatures and have a Republican governor. They don't have to be a MAGA governor. Okay. My governor's a Republican. She's not MAGA at all. She's very moderate. She's not a Trump fan. Okay. But she's very business friendly and very business savvy. So that's all it takes. Yes, I'm targeting New Yorkers, Californians, people from Jersey, people from Boston. You guys need to stop complaining about the Democrats and get rid of them. Otherwise, you're putting a lot of faith in a Republican Congress at the federal level to continue this salt tax. And by the way, this is why I'm not really sympathetic. I'm certainly not a lower middle class person. I've inherited some things. I've worked for things. I understand what income bracket I'm in and what goes along with that. But I'm not having sleepless nights over the salt tax. If you're in a dwelling that yields a 30 or 4, or I just saw this morning, Mike Johnson is going to give them up to 40,000 in state and local deductions. You're living in a fucking pretty nice house, man. I mean, that's staggering to me. You're talking here are the count. You're talking about Palm Beach, Florida. Okay, you're talking about the Bay Area in San Francisco, right? You're talking about Westchester County, New York. Okay, where the elites live, guys. The elites. This is not. These are not middle class people that are seeking this deduction. Think about what your property tax bill is. I can tell you, my primary residence, because I'm zoned for commercial. Uh, I'm at about all in with 2 houses on here and 3 rentals. I'm at 20,000 in New Hampshire. Now that's a staggering number. So my every time I go to town hall, 4 times a year, it's a $5,000 check I gotta write. But think about it. The way my property's zoned, uh, if I ever sold it, I would get more than what I think it's worth, even though it's coastal. So there's an advantage there. So I'm paying for that trump card, if you will. If I ever had to sell this place, I'm going to get top dollar regardless of the economy. More than what I put into it, believe me. So I'm not complaining about it, but What I'm saying is, you're talking about the Mark Cubans of the world. You're talking about is I like. Don't get me wrong, I like him. Grant Cardone, people like that, the one percenters. They're the ones that are, you know, have these sort of deductions that they need. And it's not that they can't afford it. It's that they like it. So just remember, if you're want to get all libertarian with me and you're really, really concerned about salt tax, uh, you're simping for the one percenters, Democrats and Republicans both. And I'm fine with that. I'm just letting you know you're not doing anything for somebody who's making 50 grand a year and has a $1,100 a month mortgage in a starter home. You're not doing anything for them with the salt tax. So I don't really see the need as a political, well, not as a political, as a practical matter to have to jam this into the bill because I'm just going to be straight talk with you. That's a carrot that rich asses don't need right now. They really don't. They're not going to miss that $30,000 to $40,000. I understand it's their money, but hey, man, I'm not the one who told them to buy a $5 million house. Okay, that sounds like you've heard the expression. That sounds like it's a you problem when you're trying to when a friend or colleague is trying to vent to you, and you just want to tell them to grow up. This is really a rich person's problem, and I'm not really losing any sleep over it. And I don't think you should either. So, really curious to see if people are in here are really particular with this salt tax. So, all right, moving on, moving on. So, here are some big questions, and after I go through these bullet points, let me pause here because I don't want to just talk through this whole space. Start grabbing a mic if you want to speak on what I've spoken about. It's the best way to do it. Okay. Um, Here are some big questions. Will these tariffs offset costs without crushing consumers? That's a big question. I think yes, it will offset uh, most of the cost. I think a lot of people that are projecting and modeling that the tariffs are a canard and that it's not a revenue generator, that's fine. But just understand they have no data to base that off of because we've not collected import tariffs at this level in 120 years. So their argument that that tariffs are not going to help, their argument is no better than mine against it, or their argument against it is not better than mine agreeing with that sentiment. Tariffs are revenue, guys. Okay, that goes right to the federal government. That's a fresh pile of money for them to start spending or not spending. So, we're Liberation Day was April 2nd. It's what, May 20th? I mean, what data did they have to come to the conclusion that tariffs are not going to be helpful in tandem with this bill? They don't. No more than I have evidence that it's going to help. So it's just a gut feeling. So it's a gamble. Next question. Will cuts to Medicaid and SNAP spark state level crises? So, like I said, well, entitlements like Medicare, Medicaid, and the like are federal, okay? And there's a lot of money to be saved from that if you decide to do any cuts. It's real money there. We spend an incredible amount of money on these programs, as you all know. Okay. Um, but like I kind of framed it earlier, the way I'm reading this from the House Ways and Means Committee summary is there needs to be more state level control. Like Gavin Newsom needs to have accountability, guys. He needs to find out exactly how many illegals are in his state, which I don't think he'll ever get an accurate number. Kathy Hochul in New York, she needs to get a handle on how many illegals are in her state. We're not talking about deportations right now. These might be asylum seekers, these might be nonviolent criminals, but they're engaged in fraud right now where they're collecting Medicaid and food stamps basically when they're not U.S. citizens. So they're not entitled to this. We're not even talking about deportations to El Salvador. We're just talking about locking up the money that's being shelled out to people that don't deserve it. And those people are illegals. Okay. So I guess it depends on the state. But then again, if you're in a state like Oklahoma, you've got less of a problem with illegals than people in California do. So I guess again, this goes down to red state versus blue state. I don't foresee the Republican governors not getting on board with Trump's initiative there. It's going to save them a lot of money on the state level, and it's going to save their tax-paying residents a lot of money when on the federal level when they're filing taxes. We could knock off a few million illegals off of Medicaid that are committing fraud. That's real money that's adding up. Okay, so while we're not taking tax off of Social Security at this juncture, we're freeing up a lot of money that's been going out for who knows, guys, years, decades. A lot of illegals with dead people's Social Security numbers, stolen identities. You can't have oversight of that from a bureaucratic office in Washington D.C. The states have to get off their ass and pitch in. The Democrat governors won't do it. They really won't. But look at how many states have Republican governors. What is it, 32 right now out of the 50? I think American Samoa has a Republican governor too, but I really don't think that in the territories that he has a big problem with food stamps there. I could be wrong, but we'll see. So out of the 50 states in Puerto Rico, Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and American Samoa, check who has a Republican governor. And if it's 32, 33, then those are the states that you will probably not see an issue in this going forward because they're being like emboldened, right, by Trump to take action. All right, last question here. Guys, start putting in mics here. Can GOP moderates and hardliners strike a deal? Okay, so I covered the moderates with the salt tax, okay? Uh, my problems with the Freedom Caucus. My problems with the Libertarians. That they're basically gaslighting and lying to you that there's no savings in this. Let me This is from Rapid Response. Janet, I see you grab the mic. If you want to start thinking about your comment or question, I'll get to you in a second here. So Rapid Response, fact. This is right from the White House this morning. The one big beautiful bill includes 1.6 trillion with a T in mandatory savings, the most in US history. Okay, let me read that to you again. The one big beautiful bill of President Trump includes 1.6 trillion in mandatory savings, the most in US history. That's a fact, okay? Another fact, when this one big beautiful bill passes, President Trump will have taken action to reduce deficits by 7+ trillion in just 5 months. We can get into that later. That's kind of a loaded claim, but it's true. Here's another fact, the last one. The one big beautiful bill achieves, we'll just call it the BBB. How's that? Achieves substantially more mandatory spending reductions than the Deficit Reduction Act of 2005. That was under Bush Jr. That only saved 140 billion. The Balanced Budget Act of 1997 saved 650 billion. The Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1993, that was under Clinton, saved 360 billion. And the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1990 under Bush Sr. saved 440 billion. Although that really fell flat on its face because we had a massive recession in 1991 and the first war in Iraq. Okay, so these might sound like large sums of money to you that all these former presidents mustered these kind of savings, guys, but I could tell you 1.76 trillion is a hell of a lot more money than 440 billion. Okay, and again, this is what they call real money. All right, so let me pause there, take a break so I don't talk your ear off. Janet, you grabbed the mic. Do you have anything you want to say or any question here? Maybe I can help with. Maybe. No? Okay, just hanging out, no problem. All right, let me continue then. Don't be shy, guys. I don't want to talk for 2 hours. I want you guys to talk. Doesn't do anybody any good to listen to one man's opinion. Got to listen to many people's opinion, right? Okay. Let me keep moving here. So if you look at this, and like I said, I'll put the PDF in the pill. eventually. It's 47 pages. This is really your best summary. This is what I read last night. So tax rates are all basically the biggest tax saving for the individual, and those are our people making 20,000 to 80,000 a year. So our middle class, they potentially could save $5,000 when they file taxes in, excuse me, 2026. So that's good money. You put 5,000 or thereabouts in the pocket of a middle class person. I mean, that's their car payment for the year. That could be several mortgage payments. Okay, that's real money. That grows their purchasing power. Okay, it makes them more liquid, makes the individual more liquid. We want liquidity, guys. Okay, when people have more of their own money, the economy grows. Okay, that's something. If I could just introduce you to one concept. Okay, that the more money you have, the better the economy will be. Because when you have purchasing power and you have more money in your pocket, you have what they call choices. Okay. Now it's been proven in the Trump era, since his tax cut in 2017, my business tax went from 35% to 21. That put about $30,000 in my pocket that year. Like at the end of the year, I still use a Dome book. I don't have QuickBooks, but I handwrite everything. Uh, my accountant told me, our capital basically went up exponentially. I was able to hire a couple of part-time guys. It really took a lot of pressure off of me being able to hire contractors. Okay, and that 30,000 didn't go into my pocket; it went to my company checking account. All right, so and I think that year I don't remember 2017, but 2018, I think my gross receipts of my business. Okay, this was not my take home. Okay, I think my gross business receipts was like 198,000. So I had a pretty good year. Okay, um, that was just on rental work and rental income. Okay, that's what goes through my business account. Now, obviously, that's gross. Now, my net is not near that, but regardless, my business finished the year from a tax standpoint in a better position. This bill kind of aims to do that for the individual person who doesn't, like I said, a W-2, a wage employee, as we call them. My guys are 1099 because I don't have employees. They get a 1099, which shows, what I paid them, and when they file, their tax bill is based off of what they made from me, unless they paid quarterlies. I highly doubt they do. I've never asked, but most guys don't that moonlight. So this is a good thing, guys. We want to empower that bracket of people. Perfect example, friends. If you have, I see Summer in here. I know she had one of her daughters just graduated. Congratulations. This is a great tax incentive for somebody who's finishing up school and getting their first full their field of study, right? Where you hit with all the bills, the apartment rent, the utilities, because it's really is, and your first step in going out in the real world is when you get all these bills. You get the electric bill, you get the cable bill, you get the internet bill, the water bill, right? And you have all these expenses that you didn't have at mom and dad's house. Uh, and think about it. Most people, I think, are in that bracket for entry level work. They're going to be paying less taxes than the college graduates last year did if this thing passes. I mean, I'm assuming they're going to be in that 50 to $80,000 bracket, right? So this is a very good thing for young people, guys. Gen Z gets a boost in this, and it's all about our children, right? This is why we work so hard. This is why we do what we do. You want to hand them off a better America than we got, okay? I grew up in Ronald Reagan's America. I'm trying to have my kids who grew up in Trump's America have a similar experience. And they're going to do that when they have more of their own money, whether they're working part time or full time. This is a very important thing, guys. I don't want this lost on you. I don't need a salt tax. Okay. I'm not rich, but I don't need a salt tax. Mark Cuban doesn't need a salt tax deduction. Grant Cardone doesn't need that. Okay. we're talking about billionaires at this point, but they don't need that. They're going to they've made that money before they get up in the morning. I understand the government should have less of our money, but it's not worth a political revolution over. Like I said, I didn't tell them to buy a $5 million house. All right, continuing. So the first 20 or 30 pages, friends, is all like tax stuff. So really, if your friends are like, what is the big, beautiful bill? Like, what the hell is in it? What does it even mean? Just tell them it's a tax cut bill. And by the way, you know what they're removing? All the concessions on, guys. This is a huge part of it. All this solar panel shit and all this all this green crap. You know how you get the door-to-door salespeople saying if you put solar panels on, you get to deduct this. You get all that shit is gone because all you were doing was empowering these green energy companies that, by the way, didn't even exist 4 and 5 years ago, and they were created out of an NGO to get people off of using fossil fuels. So no more tax credits. Okay, so this is a situation where if you're a suburban Democrat who was talked into these solar panels or whatever, or energy efficient thing, whatever, uh, no more tax credits. You don't get to deduct from Joe Biden's IRS 800 or 900 bucks off your taxes because you decided to put these ugly ass panels on your roof because your house is facing southeast, right? So I'm happy about that because that was a huge scam, guys. I don't know the exact number. I saw it in somebody's tweet the other day. You won't believe how much money Biden put into that. I mean, all these solar panel companies popped up basically since 2020. There's dozens of them now. Sunrun is a big one. Vivint is a big one in my area. Um, yeah, it's guys, it's a scam. Anyway, so that's and we've been putting, and it's not like $5 million, guys. We're talking about billions of dollars the feds have spent on the Democrat administrations have put into this. This goes back to Obama. All that shit is gone. There's going to be no advantage to having solar panels at all. So that's a good thing. And here's another good thing: no tax on tips. Okay, this is a big thing for anybody who's got a service gig or whatever. So if you want to look at, it's page 11 of the bill, at least on my text here. It's section 110101. That's no joke. I know that sounds really binary, but it's section 110101. No tax on tips. The current law, it's not applicable. What's the provision in Trump's bill? This provision creates an above the line deduction for qualified tips received by an individual in an occupation which traditionally and customarily receives tips during a given taxable year. In order to be considered a qualified tip, the tip amount must be paid voluntarily, is not subject to negotiation, and is determined by the payer. Okay, so basically, any tip you give to a server, a bartender, uh, an Uber driver, and I think this goes for cash or credit. Here's what I would tell people: try and give out cash tips at a restaurant, even if I pay for the dinner with my credit card or the beers with my credit card. I always try to give the bartender or a server the tip in cash. So I just draw the line through try and do that because I guarantee there's going to be some uh, wrench in the mix where there's some stipulation for credit tips. So just please try and do that. I try and make an honest effort to carry like 200 bucks with me every day. All right. In case there's something I need or want. I do like to put my meals on my company card because I need the deduction, even if it's like 30 bucks, I still like to charge that. I need deductions. Otherwise I'm paying a lot of tax. So, but always try and do that, friends. Rosie, you came up, you could pop in if you'd like.
So I'm going to add, it's really important to tip because I've heard, and I go in, and the only reason I tell you, Gads, because you're the only one who likes to make fun as much as I do of the morning sick diner. They were saying they're no longer going to tip people because of the no tax on tips, that why bother? So at the cost of America and Americans, we have people who hate Trump so much, they're not going to tip servers, or that's what they say. So we want to be the difference and not follow that shit. Not that any of you will, but there are sickos thinking that way.
So Rosie, what you're saying is let's just talk brass tacks here, because we're all adults in here. So DeSantis supporters from Florida are saying they're not going to tip because Orange Man bad if this thing
And I'm
passes.
talking about diner dwellers, because there's a difference between people who supported him in the primary and came around to Trump, and then there's the ones that remain in the diner and they regurgitate this every day. Those are the ones saying, why bother tipping at all anymore? Because why would I give money to the people in the front of the house? The chefs aren't making any more. The dishwashers aren't making tips. We're just going to not tip at all. It's very anti-American.
It is. And imagine being that petty a person and how sad a life you must live. You know what? Now I'm going to tip even higher.
Me too.
So, they shouldn't give out with their pseudo gotcha plans to put a monkey wrench in the works, because you've got people like me that are able to afford more. So, all right, now I'm a 30% tipper. So
and just so if anyone hears it, like, because they've been on Democratic Spaces, I'm convinced these people have some stake in the game, whether it be just to be influencer or actually paid to tank America and turn us against our president. Regardless, I think that talking point needs to be shit upon at every fucking opportunity we have. That's vile. It's awful. These are service workers. And you know what? I hope they get a really big, tarry, disgusting, like chewing tobacco in their meatloaf.
Yeah, you folks, I don't often tell people what to think or even how to think, but here's some unsolicited advice from me. You really need to start believing in the concept of karma, because it exists. So, if you've got any friends or family that have TDS and they say vile crap like that they're not going to tip because of Trump, might want to start introducing them to the concept of karma. Okay, I didn't believe in karma either until I was about in my 30s. But it exists. I've been on the receiving end of bad karma and good karma alike. I'll just leave it at this. It's better to be on the receiving end of good karma, right? So that's the vibes of this place. That's what I'm trying to do anyway. Yeah, Janet. Thanks, Rosie. Janet, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add that many times before Trump even came around, I would tip like the busboy, because I'd see that they had 4 waitresses and there's 1 bus person. I have done that. I have tipped the cook if my food was outstanding or my steak was perfect, things like that. I guess because I happen to be a person that wants to reward people if I feel like they went above and beyond. I wish more people felt that way about every aspect of our lives, rewarding people that are behind the scenes, the wives that make the husbands successful, or the kids that support their parents through, horrible things that might happen to them in their life by, mowing people's yards to help support their family because their dad lost their job. I try to reward people like that by telling them that what a wonderful person they are and trying to boost them and help them in any way that I can. But I wish more people would reach out to other people simply because they have freaking compassion or something. But yeah, I think that's pitiful and sad. And I think we should call people out that do that. They would definitely call you out. They're doing it now. They're trying to call out Trump because he's trying to help people that work hard and make $2 an hour, basically, working for a restaurant or a bar. They're just assholes. So you can't do anything about assholes except share the information and help that the assholes don't win. That's all I want to add. Thank you for letting me speak.
And Janet, I'm going to add on that. I've been blocked from the diner. I would go up there and like, I would be ready to speak in that moment. They do allow people to speak who haven't come out against them. So if you're still accessible to this diner that they run in the morning, it's a very early morning space, go up and speak to them, because It hurt. It hurt for every service worker. My in-laws, they were diner owners, but they began off the boat from Greece, working in the kitchen. Like their whole life was blood, sweat, and tears of a restaurant. And just to nip that kind of stuff in the bud, a lot of you, may not know about it. So if you want, you can go in and speak your mind.
Yeah, I'm from a place that makes money from tips, basically New Orleans in the surrounding area as a tourist industry. And when people go there with that attitude, all they're doing is hurting the industry, because if people can't make a living, they leave. That's what happens. Sorry, Gads, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. I just while we're on this subject, I think it's really interesting, guys. We got to revisit. This is what won Trump the state of Nevada. Just FYI. I mean, if it is the service industry state, even more so than New York, in the country, right? When he talked about no tax on tips, and by the way, I want to quickly just pivot into no tax on overtime. That's what won him. You win. I forget what the name of the county Las Vegas is in, but you win Las Vegas and Reno and the surrounding counties. In Nevada, you've won the state of Nevada. It's a big state landmass wise, not a lot of people, right? Because it's mostly desert. So that's something to remember. This is a campaign promise, so you can't say the dude's inconsistent on any level imaginable, right? So this is a good thing. Let me just read you no tax on overtime, because it's kind of, like I said, hand in hand. So it's section 110102, current law not applicable. This provision creates an above the line deduction for overtime premium pay during a given taxable year. Qualified overtime compensation means overtime comp paid to an individual required under section 7, blah, 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 of the Federal Labor Standards Act in 1938. Okay. Enhanced deduction for seniors, current law not applicable, provides a deduction for seniors 65 and over of $4K per eligible filer with a modified adjusted gross income that does not exceed $75K for single filers, $150 if for married jointly. So it's a deduction. So if you've got two elderly, this is a huge part of America here. You got two seniors that are living off Social Security and a meager pension. Chances are when they file as a married couple, it's going to be way less than $150,000, right? So that being said, they're eligible for up to, not up to, the max, an additional $4,000 off. Again, I can't even tell you. Think about all the times old people go to Walmart to buy prescriptions, okay? And think about what their copays are. That frees up a lot of money for them, even if it's $3,500, doesn't it? So, and no tax on car loan interest, currently not applicable. Fed up, I'll get to you in a second. The provision creates an above the line deduction of up to $10,000 for qualified passenger vehicle loan interest during a given taxable year. So this deduction will phase out starting with the taxpayer's modified adjusted gross income if it exceeds $100,000. So yeah, again, for a middle class person to deduct their car loan interest, this is not for Mark Cuban and Grant Cardone to deduct. They probably buy cars cash anyway, but interest is not for rich people. This is about the middle class. They're the ones that pay the most amount of taxes at scale. Okay, they make less money, but at scale, collectively they pay the most amount of taxes. Right. This is a good thing. All right, I'll pause there and shut up. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. It's about protecting the middle class, which has been dying over the years because of a lot of the stupid policies. You were talking about the tips thing too, and I love how there's so many people that run around and make statements like that about their reason for not tipping, that they have no clue of the industry unless they've worked in it. I've never been a server, but I have been a dishwasher, so I've gotten to see it from the inside. And what these people don't understand is, like, Jan said, these people are on $2 an hour plus tips. And the other part people don't see, if you're the opening server you're typically working at that same $2 an hour. The first hour, folding napkins, rolling silverware, prepping stuff, doing things like that. I know at our restaurant, the servers all came in an hour before open, and they were setting up. And do you think they got paid, even minimum wage at that? No, they got paid server minimum wage. Now, the place I worked at, luckily, they made really good tips because it was a high middle to higher end restaurant. But you know, so these people, but they needed those tips to make up for that time, right? And they also need the tips to make up for the slow time. The place I worked at was dinner. It opened the doors at 4. Do you think we were busy on an average weekday from 4 to 5? No. And sometimes they didn't make even their back that first hour. They might have one table. Now we were slammed from 5 to 9, and they usually made bank after that. But that's only if they made their tips. It's just ridiculous that so many of these people make these comments and have no idea because they've been sheltered and just haven't worked real jobs in their freaking life and don't probably know people that worked real jobs, because that's the only people that are going to talk like that. Unless you've been completely sheltered from that, anybody I know that knows people in that industry, family that's worked there, friends that have worked there, have done it themselves, would never say anything like that because they know how it works. It's disgusting. Oh, and by the way, Trump's meeting with the president of South Africa and a bunch of his people right now as well. So that should be an interesting conversation behind closed doors.
I added a link at the top. I am blocked from it, but for anyone interested in going into that Zynia and being there in that moment to be that voice, please go ahead, grab the people who are co-hosts, follow them, or just hop in at 7:30 in the morning Eastern.
Yeah, the holdouts is what we call them.
You know what? Like here I am. I'm in Florida. So guys, good stuff happening here, and I'm in Florida because my parents are here. I don't live with all the bougie people. Like I go to work. I work with troubled school kids. I'm real. So what I wanted to say is, do you know how many busts there has been for child P here? Like, it's been insane. We had an entire block shut down with the U.S. Marshals and with our Sheriff's Department. We're getting these idiots. We are getting these horrible, disgusting people, and we are taking them off the grid so our children can play in peace. The Trump administration is making those arrests happen. And not only that, they go to another that's close by, the connection. I've seen 2 this week alone.
Good news. Slowly but surely, we're chipping away at that. All right. Good comments, everybody. And thank you for allowing me to take a breather here. So continuing on this with the bill itself here, a lot of deductions for school things, child tax credits. These are just bullet points. There, if you have any grandchildren or being born or children, there's now a provision for MAGA accounts. So what that is, I thought this was interesting. This provision creates money accounts for growth and advancement, a new kind of savings account designed to incentivize education, entrepreneurship, and home ownership while promoting financial security. The accounts will be administered by a bank or similar institution, and the overall program is overseen by the Department of Treasury. So on January 1st, if this bill passes, parents of any child under the age of 8 may open a MAGA account for their child. This is kind of like a Roth IRA for children. I think it's great. Diversified fund. It's, a lot of that would have to do with our sovereign wealth fund that we're creating. Maybe it's backed by the Bitcoin reserve we have, gold, tariff revenue to be determined. But you can contribute up to $5,000 a year annually of after-tax dollars to this MAGA account for your child or grandchild. I think it's great. There's a pilot program as well for newborn children. So all run by the Secretary of Treasury. That's all good. Let me just get down to this next section, and then a few of you can talk here. Just making sure some of this stuff it's more or less like deductions of a similar family, so I don't need to read every one, obviously. This is a big one. Let me just give you the intro, and then I'll take some speakers. So, section B of the bill, found on page 21, make rural America and Main Street grow again. What this is an extension of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act reforms for rural America and Main Street. Okay, so it's a continuation of the 21% small business tax, corporate tax rate, I believe. And you're adding into the concept of enabling companies to hire American, right? And build in America. Okay, that's the Main Street Initiative, basically. He's talked about this for a long time. You guys all know the details. It's advantageous for you to open your business here, hire American workers. There's a lot of tax breaks for these new companies, as there should be. And I think you get zero interest if you are your first year on capital expenditure. So that's if a company like, say, Maytag wants to build a big factory, a big plant in Bloomington, Indiana, to make appliances, and they're refurbishing an old factory that was closed because of NAFTA in the early 90s. They're obviously going to have to refurbish it, rebuild it, make it modern, get it online. I think the first year of modifications, capital expenditures, getting Wi-Fi, getting fiber optics, making it a 21st century factory instead of a 20th century factory. All those improvements are deductible for the first year. All in theory, with stipulations, but that's good. China does that, actually. They do that. That's how they lure Western companies in, is you don't pay any corporate tax for they have a lot of carrots to divert business there. So Trump's taking a page out of their playbook. Mac's a new speaker. We'll go with him or her. So Mac, what's up?
Hey, appreciate you having me. Question about the big beautiful bill. Best I can read, if I'm understanding this right, with the no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, and a deduction on the Social Security, that plays out in 2028. Is that correct?
Just one thing: no deductions on Social Security yet. So it's Social Security in this current form, Mac. It's still being taxed. The Senate might throw that in when they do reconciliation, or this bill, the no tax on Social Security, might be a standalone bill at some point this summer, because that's a lot of money that in theory the government would be giving up. No, I see this stuff as effective January 1st, 2026, Mac.
January effective 2026, but dies in 2028. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would only go. Yes, correct. It would only go for the duration of his term, unless. But you saw yesterday that the Senate passed that independently. I think no tax on tips as part of this spending bill or tax cut bill will have that past 2028, because it looks like the Senate voted 100-0 to pass it. It looks like they want to make that part of federal law ongoing as a. Some of these good ideas, like no tax on tips overtime. It starts in January when the new tax year begins, and they're scheduled to expire 2028 unless a senator wants to pick up that bill, sponsor it, and then it becomes federal law, like indefinitely. So yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. That's good clarification. But what I could tell you short term, even if some of this stuff doesn't last beyond 2028, guys, this is going to be like high octane diesel for the economy. You've seen it before in 2017. What happened when he did that tax bill? 2018, we were all printing money before the pandemic, weren't we? I know I was. I went on like 3 vacations that year. I had all this money left over I had never had that much money as a proprietor after everything was paid, like left over. Never in my life. You know, when you pay your quarterly tax and you finish out 3 months and you're like, holy shit, you know, I've got about $18,000 in extra money that I didn't have 3 months ago. You know, hey, everything's paid, taxes are paid, company credit cards are paid. Might as well plan a vacation. And what happens when I did that? I think when I went to Bermuda that year because I'd never been and I wanted to see the red sand there, right? Fucking, what do you think I did? I stimulated the economy of American Airlines flying out there. I stimulated the economy of the American-owned hotel in Bermuda I stayed at, and there were a lot of people from like North Carolina working there at the resort. You know, temporary workers. So all those American college students that were working at the resort that summer, all the cash tips I was giving them, I was stimulating the economy. Okay, you see how this works? It's a trickle down, guys. Janet, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in with what I was going to bring up earlier before you moved on, was the fact that when Trump's first term was going on, he was trying to promote, more jobs in America, people being able to save money. He was talking about all the same things that he's now finally getting able to implement. And what I saw after they got rid of Trump, basically, was Walmart, for one, and UPS, Firestone, Tyson, cutting down on their full-time employees so they didn't have to pay for health insurance, things like that, and putting them right there and then making them work overtime. So that it was like they're getting their same hours, but they were not getting the benefits. So now they're going to be pissed off because now they're not going to get to make extra money off taxes for their states, that they get bumps from the different states bumping them up simply because they're bringing lots of tax revenue basically to the states that they're in, and that they get away with so much stuff. So I'm interested in finding out what they're going to do, because I know that a lot of companies are trying to restructure to not have to have overtime and different things like that. So I'm excited to find out how these companies are going to scramble to try to come up with that extra revenue for their state that they promised when they were getting all these tax breaks and stuff to build more of their stores or whatever else. So basically, they're going to hate Trump even more. But I think it's great. I mean, when you go to a Lowe's and you got, a bunch of tools and some other things that you want to buy, and there's no cashiers and you have to scan it all yourself, and then they hover over you to make sure you're not stealing. It's like, it's pathetic, and it just makes you feel like you're a criminal when all you'd rather have is an actual checkout person to check you out. So to see them squeeze every dime out of the American citizen to try to not have to pay any employees or benefits, it's pretty disgusting. So I try not to shop at any place that doesn't have customers that wait on or get waited on by real people. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you for letting me speak.
You're welcome. So the biggest thing, Janet, I don't mind that your hand's up, and I think your hand is stuck, at least on my end. So I don't know if you want to talk again or not, but it doesn't go down. No big deal. Just so you know.
It's because I'm on my computer. I'm sorry. I just put it down.
No worries. No problem. A lot of people don't know. I was in a space this morning. I could hear about every fifth word. It was so buggy, and nobody could see that we were all on listener mode, basically, even though we were all speakers. But look, not to sidetrack it, guys, but you might have seen this. This is important because I'm going to get to the Thomas Massey complaints in a second here, but John Deere plans to invest $20 billion over the next decade in American expansion, production, and manufacturing. All with U.S. steel. All their equipment's going to be made with U.S. steel. John Deere has not been building their tractors and other equipment with U.S. steel, by the way. They got caught with their pants down a while ago. It's not like it's just a recent switch. Like everybody, they're trying to do stuff on the cheap. But John Deere has been not very good to American steel and aluminum. They're not the only one, but I say that because they're so big in the ag industry globally and, of course, here. And in my opinion, they owe it to the American steel manufacturers to build and craft with stuff that's forged here. End of story. It's laughable to me that John Deere is using Chinese steel on the secondary market to make tractors and sell them back to China. So stupid. At least if you're going to sell to China, and I know you need that market because it's 2 billion people. I understand you can't not sell to China if you're a global business, but at least for fuck's sake, make it with American steel at least. I have to, I just bought something off of Amazon, which I hate to do, but again, you can't find it sometimes. I got this compressor hose that I couldn't find it, made in China. Just for a compressor for a job site. I wanted this specific hose and clamps. I mean, crazy. And the clamps I could bend it with my pinky. It's ridiculous, the shitty steel and aluminum that Amazon uses. We're going to get to that, by the way, but I'm going to attack the libertarians because it's my favorite thing in the world to do. So the short story is, guys, Thomas Massey is a liar. He's completely Chip Roy is a liar, and sadly, a lot of the Freedom Caucus people are, you guessed it, liars, because they're going on any outlet that will have them. I mean, Massey has TDS, guys. He's going to be on MSLSD pretty soon. I mean, I see him going on Rachel Maddow's show in 3 to 6 months at this point. Okay, they're saying that there's no savings and it's a continuation of the Biden spending. Now, to be fair, he's not wrong that some of the spending we have were from the omnibus temporary bills that Schumer was passing and Mitch McConnell was passing while Biden was president. He's not wrong about that. But here's where their argument against what Trump is doing completely goes off the rails. And it's not a minor point, guys. It's huge. Okay, because here's the thing. Thomas Massey does not, in the Freedom Caucus, do not want to account for the aforementioned tariff revenue I talked about. Okay? Guys, we spend $20 trillion a year as a country between the federal government and all of the citizens here. We're the number one customer market on the world. All right? Think about the amount of products, everything from rubber dog shit to cruise missiles, or that we import into the United States. Okay? Rubber dog shit on Amazon all the way up to munitions. Okay? Think about all we buy. I just gave you the number. It was 20 trillion last year. That's the amount of money we put out into the global economy. So don't you think collecting tariffs on that is a good idea? Well, not getting into that argument. Just assume for a second it's a baseline of 10% for every country from China to the Congo. All right? So it gave you a huge economy and a small one. Everything A to Z. Just say we're collecting 10%. Even if we import $560,000 worth of product. Okay? Think of that, money adds up. That's real money that we have in our pocket that we were not collecting before. You saw some of the ridiculous Cambodia was charging us like a 250% tariff on everything. Cambodia, of all places. I can't even believe they got away with it. Guys, this is criminal. Okay? We're now Trump's saying we're going to bring in trillions. Maybe not. Who cares? If we bring in hundreds of billions, guys, that's a lot better than $0, isn't it? So this enables us to have a tax cut, guys, because do you know what a tax cut is? It's less money that the government is getting as revenue. Remember, it's called the Internal Revenue Service, i.e., the internal take tax money from hardworking American service. So what you're getting is whether he means to do this or not, Massey and people like him that are obstructionists, they say they're preaching fiscal responsibility and fiscal sanity. What they're doing is simping for the IRS guys. He could say whatever he wants to Tucker Carlson. He could say whatever he wants to Tim Pool. He's simping for the IRS because that's the dirty little secret, guys. Republicans, Democrats especially, but Republicans alike, they don't want us keeping more of our money because with less tax dollars, that's less money they have for their pet projects in defense, for their lobbyists. Okay, great. Thomas Massey doesn't have an APAC handler. That's awesome. I commend that about him. But that doesn't let him off the hook for everything else. Did you know the state of Kentucky, guys, is like a pure import state? It's a commonwealth, actually. Go look it up. Why do you think Rand Paul is so against the Canadian tariffs in particular? Did you know Kentucky, of all states, imports a big fraction of like timber and stuff and everything else from Canada, of all places? So all those beautiful stables you saw for the pretty horses at the Kentucky Derby, that was probably made with timber from British Columbia, Canada, imported into Kentucky. Now you know why Rand Paul doesn't like uh, the USMCA or anything that punishes his beloved Canada and beloved Mexico, because his state, that Kentucky, is an import state, whereas you can see Texas is an export state because of oil, right? Alaska, even though there's not a lot of people up there, they're an export state because of oil, timber, and natural resources, right? They import a lot too because it's hard to get shit there, right? It's far away. But you see what I'm saying? So the Freedom Caucus is not really. I don't really appreciate their lack of fucking honesty with the American people because what they're doing is they're purposely leaving out information, which to me is the same thing as lying. So yes, he can be correct that Trump is continuing some of Biden's spending, but he's not being truthful when he says that this bill doesn't cut anything. It doesn't cut some of Biden's spending. Yes, not everything Biden was spending on was necessarily bad, guys. All right. We're a country of 350 million people. When you have a problem, right? Say you're a vet in here and you have to go to the VA does not get funded by bake sales. It gets funded by our tax dollars, which I'm fine with because it's the VA, and by extension, that's spending. Okay, we have to get away from this concept that spending is, if you want to be frugal in your own life, that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. You want to keep the same iPhone for 10 years, you want to keep the same shitbox car and drive it into the ground at 200, that's fine. I commend that. I admire that in some respects. I'm not like that. Okay, but people are, and that's so. But don't impose that on your federal government, guys, because guess what? Uh, your federal government. Think about what your bills are, guys. Your mortgage, your car payment, your utilities. Okay, that's awesome that you're very frugal and you bought a house with a low pro. You can't outsource that mentality onto the federal government. They have, they have a lot to spend money on, and I understand that we do have to pay some sort of tax or consumption tax or income tax. I'd prefer it be a consumption tax. I'd prefer my government spend less. But you want to enjoy America as you know it. And Trump said this yesterday, guys, in regards to Massey. He goes, what Massey doesn't get is we haven't fixed the country yet. We're not in a position, guys, to reduce federal spending by like 80%. On paper, it sounds great. Let's do it. Let's go for it. Let's stop spending money. Okay, that's fine. Do you know how excessively harder your life is going to be if, first of all, you could say goodbye to any sort of military protection. The Pentagon, they'll turn the lights out and sell it. Okay? We're not in a position, guys, to save the money you think we are. We're just not there yet. We might not be there in my lifetime, guys. So think about that. I just gave you the numbers, 1.6 trillion. So, hey man, our federal deficit's like 36 trillion, right? I have a feeling when Trump's out of office, it's going to be about 10 trillion less, even with all this spending. And I'm going to tell you why. Excuse me. The tariff revenue, we don't know what that's going to be. People are just not, they're shitting on it because they haven't seen tangible results yet. Let's see at the end of the year how much tariff revenue we've gained. What Doge is doing is basically eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. So there is spending that was going on, like USAID is a big one, that is no longer going to be happening. That means the federal government's spending less money. So when you basically eliminate USAID, and they were spending hundreds of billions of dollars, and you basically gutted it, if that entity is no longer using that amount of taxpayer money, how could you say we haven't cut spending? We just eliminated a huge behemoth of basically a glorified NGO. So it's not true that we're not cutting spending. By the way, I spent like 10 minutes, guys, talking about kicking illegals off of entitlements: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Okay, so if Juan Lopez, who came into the country illegally from Honduras, say he came into the country in 2013 and he's been living here 12 years illegally, okay, Juan Lopez, and he got the Social Security number of a dead John Smith in Pasadena, California. And when John Smith died, he was 65. So it's not out of the realm of possibility he'd be still alive now in 2025 at 77 years old, collecting $1,800 a month. Think about it. Juan Lopez has been collecting $1,800 a month for 12 years with a fake Social Security number. Multiply that, guys, by a couple million and do the math. What is that saving us? So Massey's not being honest. I don't like it, guys, because there's a lot of people on here uh, that admit that they don't know anything about finances or the economy or politics. This guy does, and he's using MAGA platforms, and he's to lie to you. So when somebody like me, who is not the smartest, but I know more than the average person, can figure this out, Trump's a lot smarter than me. That's why he's pissed off at the guy, because the guy's lying to people, saying that there's no cuts and the spend. Their favorite thing is let's add to the deficit. Okay, guys, when the federal government spends, I don't know what year it was, when they spent $1 over the budget, that's $1 in the red. And if you're the most powerful country on earth, it doesn't matter if you're $1 in the red or 37 trillion. It's still unacceptable. The question is, how do you realistically fix that? Okay. And by the way, the deficit is an arbitrary number. Just so you're aware. That's one thing Massey doesn't tell you. It's completely arbitrary. I agree with you. 37 trillion is a disgustingly high number, a fictitious number. I agree with you. Okay? I'm not here trying to be hyperbolic with you. But go back to when was the last time we actually passed a proper federal budget? It's been a long time. Like since I think Bush, right? Bush Jr. 05 maybe, where it got ratified by both houses of Congress, signed into law by the president. It's been almost 20 years since we've had a proper budget. It's been all omnibus spending bills, right? This included, for better or for worse, but it's got a lot of good stuff in it. 70% good stuff in it. All right. So that's two things I want you to remember. The deficit is an arbitrary number, okay? That who knows who said it, but it could be altered at any time, you know? And there is a lot of savings because eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, guys, is saving money. When you're kicking dead people off of the Social Security payouts rolls, when you're kicking illegals off of the Social Security payout, that's saving money. So in theory, that's a couple of million people less, whether they're dead or whether they're illegals with phony identity that have been collecting our money for God knows how long. You're going to see that show up in the ledger, guys, in the balance sheet of this country in 2026. And then we're all going to be sitting back saying, this Trump's a smart guy. He's a sharp cookie. He's a sharp cat. Maybe I should listen to him more often. So that's the story with that. And let me see. Let me just check DMs really quick. Oh, Fed Up's back up. Fed Up, I'm just he's Fed Up, I'm gonna read a couple DMs I got. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I was just coming up. Yeah, everybody needs to watch this thing with the South African leader. Trump, I think, is spanking him worse than he did Zelensky. So because he was prepared for it this time. The guy starts telling his lies that they're not targeting white farmers. Trump had a 5-minute video showing leaders from South Africa calling for the death of the white farmers, showing video footage of the mass graves, all of that. And then after the footage, some reporter asked him a scuzzy question, and he pulled out, he had a stack of articles of the dead white farmer. This one saying they had violence upon them. This one was killed and raped. This one was, and just stack. Just peeling them off right there in front of, with that leader sitting right beside him. It is freaking phenomenal. I've never seen nothing like it. I mean, I'm a big Reagan kid, but Reagan wouldn't even have a brass pair this size. I mean, this is the way he's handling this guy. It's past what he did with Zelensky, hands down.
Oh, I'll have to check that out after. I'm gonna close the space soon because I got an appointment to go to. And yeah, I want to check that out. So for those of you who don't know, last week we got 49 white Afrikaners, so white South Africans of mostly Dutch descent. I think English too. But basically, the white, like Elon Musk, a white South African of European descent, is, they arrived as refugees. And I don't know if you saw CNN, they got all stirred up because here's their mentality. Well, you're arresting brown and black people and you're welcoming white. See, they make it about race. It's so stupid. What's going on in South Africa is a genocide. Okay. Because first of all, they're like 6% of the population to begin with, at most. Okay. We're not talking about millions of people here in South Africa. And he's talked about this in his first administration. I remember Mike Pompeo, when he was Secretary of State, having a tweet about this, etc. So you have to think about it in that regard, that this is not like a problem that started like 2 months ago. This is, I'm not saying it's like the Gaza refugees, but I mean, we're like a decade into this genocide of a very small minority. And why are they being targeted? It's because that they've built the agriculture community in that country. The Europeans did. Of course, indigenous black people did. Of course, they did too. But just since apartheid ended in the early '90s, really the agricultural force in that country has been through the European descent white people. That's the reason they went there. It was for farming. All right, they didn't go there for the slave trade, although there was some of that. They didn't go there to conquer. They went there mostly on religious reasons, much like our pilgrims did. So, from the same part of the world, by the way, something to think about. I'm interested in seeing that. The president of South Africa is a black guy named Cyril Ramaphosa, and he's a big time Marxist. Although a lot of people on this app cut him slack because of BRICS, and he likes Putin. So, every Western right wing person has a fetish for Putin the last 3 or 4 years. So, um, they've been cutting this a lot of slack, I think. I don't think enough people have been talking about this. This is something in theory Nick Fuentes should be all over. The Groypers should be all over. He never talks about this. Instead of debating how many Jews died in Germany and Austria in 1944, maybe he should, you know, focus on this, because this, you can't take back. I don't want to debate dead bodies from 80 years ago. This is happening right fucking now in the 21st century. Nobody talks about this. So I would encourage everybody to take a look at that clip of those South Africans arriving in Washington D.C. at Dulles Airport. They were very grateful. They were holding American flags. Very different, right? From 2021, when you saw fucking 10,000 people walk over into El Paso, Texas, with George Soros paraphernalia, right? Big difference. It has nothing to do with race. These are actual refugees. This is what America used to do with refugees, right? We really haven't taken refugees in since like the Vietnam War, where you had Vietnamese refugees. In fact, the city where my wife's from, Lowell, Massachusetts, is a Vietnamese enclave in the United States. The first two cities that welcomed Vietnamese boat people in like 1972 was Long Beach, California, in LA, and then in the Boston area in Lowell, Massachusetts. They're really the first quote unquote Vietnamese settlements in the United States, like you would call Philly a settlement for Italians. You'd call Boston a settlement for the Irish, et cetera, right? Something to think, like Miami, a settlement for Cubans. So we really haven't engaged in this sort of diplomacy since the end of the Vietnam War. It's been 50 years, guys, and I think people aren't used to. First of all, they're not used to white refugees, for obvious reasons, because where are the problems in the world? Well, I just gave you one. Vietnam was Asian people. The Contra Wars in the 1980s, that was Hispanic people from Central and South America. And obviously in the 21st century, Iraq, Afghanistan, you got people from the Middle East. So this is the first time in my lifetime that I've seen white refugees. And liberals have a big problem with this, a huge problem with it. They're not used to the white refugees. They don't like that. Because you know what they see? They see future Republican voters. They got all stirred up over 49 people, guys. Most of them were children, or half of them, from what I saw. So stupid. Such a stupid argument. That this is. You saw Marco Rubio get grilled about this. But anyway, go ahead, Fed Up, and last call for speakers, because I got to bounce in like 15 minutes, guys.
Yeah, it is so different because I just how you were saying about being near the Vietnamese. I was in one of my area here was one of where the Hmongs were sent. I went to high school with quite a few Hmongs, which is not common when you're in rural southern North Carolina. But we actually we were one of the second wave because of that, the Vietnamese. I worked with entire line. The whole line of workers was all Vietnamese, which made for really nice potlucks. Oh man. Interesting potlucks too, because we would have three lines get together, and one was
Yeah,
all
I can tell you,
Vietnamese food, the rest were
if
Southern.
you're a pho fan or a Vietnamese soup fan or sandwich fan, if you're ever in the Lowell, Mass area, you got. I remember when I lived down there. I mean, there was no shortage. Any friend or family that came into town, they said, we've never had Vietnamese that good. I said, because these are some of the first Vietnamese owned restaurants opened in the United States, and it was just really good. So her hometown's got an Asian flavor. I remember she told me her high school, everybody's last name was Tran. I remember flipping through her yearbook when I met her, and there was like 300 Trans. So yeah, it was a big enclave, and I don't know where these Afrikaners are going to settle. Probably in Iowa or Texas.
I heard Idaho maybe.
Idaho, yeah, that would be a good spot for them because their skills are much needed. We have a deficit of. Here's a good argument. Because of their skills and what the farms they owned that were taken over by the government, The next time some liberal says, we can't do mass deportations because who's going to pick our crops if we don't have Mexicans and Guatemalans? Here's what you could say. Well, we have Afrikaners now. They could pick our crops. I'm being a bit of a bit crude in saying that, but you always have to have a good retort for a lefty, right? So, and that is this particular group. That's their vocation, is farming. So it's very fertile land in South Africa, is my understanding. So they provide a lot, and like I said, it's only about 6% of the population. So, anybody have any questions about salt tax? The best I can explain it, or this bill. It looks like it's going to get passed by Labor Day. It's not going to be the final thing because the Senate will do reconciliation, where Schumer will try and pump shit in there. I don't know how much. I think John Thune has the votes in the Senate. I don't think you're going to have Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski voting no. You got to remember, some of these Republicans that hate Trump, like Susan Collins in Maine, I can't remember who else is up. Mitch McConnell's retiring, so it's irrelevant. But her in particular, she's up for re-election in 2022. And the thing about Maine that you don't really, I mean, I live just below Maine, so I know a lot about it. I'm in Maine almost every week. I'm only 7 miles to the border. What I think a lot of people don't realize about Maine is that Trump wins the electoral college in the north. So, like Nebraska, Maine has two congressional districts only because it's a small state, and it's not winner take all. So what happens is, like in 2016, Hillary won Southern Maine, which has a lot of Democrats in it. Trump won Northern Maine, which has a lot of really, to be honest with you, because I'm familiar with the impoverished white people. So if you go up to Northern Maine, you're going to think you're in West Virginia with snow. I mean, like I've told, there's people still shitting at outhouses up there. Like, it is, some of those towns, they're not even called towns. They're called, like, I remember once I went on a hike in this place called Brownville Junction, Maine. And guys, I mean, it was really nice topography. It was a great hike. But I mean, wow, it was like going back to like the 1880s. Like I've never seen white people live in conditions like that. When you go to the local convenience store, I mean, it is, oh man, tough to make a buck up there, unless you're like uh, a lumberjack. I don't know how you make money up there, to be honest with you. There's just no economic opportunity. So Susan Collins has to be really, really careful because Trump has won Maine second district 3 times. Biden didn't win it, and also Kamala didn't win it. So this is a big deal. She's going to be a critical vote. Susan Collins, the rhino from Maine. I'm not a big fan of her. She's been in office since I was in high school. She's been in there almost 30 years. So that's something to think about, that we should have the votes in the Senate, even from the rhinos. I don't think you're going to get any Democrat votes, but we don't need that. I think the question is, you might get one or two. What is Schumer going to put in there as part of reconciliation? I really hope there's no surprises. But all right, got one more speaker here. Tim's going to grab a mic. He's connecting. It was a great space, guys. I'm sorry it might have been a little boring for some of you, but I read that last night. I do recommend, if you're interested in this stuff, you actually read the bills. Anything that's got a lot of tax cuts or tax modifications, I'm drawn to it, right? I'm very, very sensitive to the amount of tax we pay. And I wanted to talk about that salt tax because I was under the impression it was going to be a holdup for some of the blue state Republicans, right? It doesn't seem to be the case. So I think we got the votes, guys. We got a 7-seat majority. Massey's not going to vote for it. Chip Roy probably won't. We might get 1 or 2 Democrats. The Democrat to keep an eye on is Henry Cuellar from southwestern Texas. He's in that El Paso district. He's probably the one Democrat that is for border enforcement because the people in his district are the first victims of the cartels. You know, he's got that first town just over the border, right? So, and what's the population? It's like 95% Mexican American. So, remember, guys, the first victims of the cartels and the traffickers are their own people. They don't start with these beautiful white college girls that sadly were raped and murdered by these animals, like like Lake and Riley, right? They start in these small little barrios over the border, where if your kid gets lost coming home from school, that could be the last time you see them. It's a very dangerous part of the country. Okay, you really can't tell the difference between an illegal and a citizen. He might vote for this bill because I didn't get into it as much as I wanted to today, but there's a lot of $100 billion for ICE or for DHS, which will help hire more agents to deport these people that we have to get the fuck out of this country, guys. It's crucial. Okay, time is not on our side in this regard. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, or I guess good morning, Gads. My only real regret about this space is that work has prevented me from being able to hear everything you've been saying, as I've had to bounce out a couple times. But no, I put a little thing down in the purple pill there that I'd asked you a question in regards to a critique in regard to a poison pill in the bill. And I'm just curious with this one big beautiful bill, since you have read it, and I know you're a pretty good analyst. Do you think there is any hidden things in this bill that might come out after the fact, or are you satisfied that it's fairly solid and there's not really any poison pills, so to speak, hidden in the body of it somewhere?
Well, there is. Thanks for the compliment, man. I recorded it if you want to listen to it later in its entirety. I think the flow of it was pretty good, but there is some continuation of the Biden spending. But I mean, it doesn't have stuff like transgender librarian fund and all that woke shit. That's not in there. There's probably some spending in Washington D.C. that would make libertarians and probably many of us cringe. But it's not the core of the bill at all, right? But I'm looking at what you put there. So you're Congress to seize control of the AI, states stripped of regulatory power. Yeah, AI is a big part of this, guys. But so that's a good point, Tim. I'm not an AI expert, and I don't even know how it works on a regulatory level, on the state level. But it sounds like they're going to centralize a lot of the AI spending. But I think it's only germane to this bill, right? And this guy Mac asked me about. It's a good question. I'm glad he brought it up. This is not a proper budget. That's it's some of these things will only last as long as Trump is in office, unless Congress decides to do a standalone bill, right? So if they want to do, it seems like no tax on Social Security, for example, is not part of this bill. The Senate could still add it in. Um, Social Security is such a big thing that really should be a standalone bill. It shouldn't be part of a big spending bill, tax cut bill, really, in my opinion. Just because it affects a very critical demographic, and that's senior citizens. So, but anyway, yeah, I'll look at this, Tim, and maybe DM you back. I'll read this. I like Zero Hedge a lot. They usually don't bullshit anybody, but
Yeah, they're basing it off of a Substack that was put out. But no, I appreciate that, because I'll be honest with you, I read the article and then I went and read the Substack. And even after reading it all, I was still a little bit confused. So maybe that's on me, though.
No, it's not like if you're not like I'm not an expert at either. I think I'll just leave you guys with this because I got to bounce. I think the whole because AI is a big part of this bill. I think what when you see the federal government quote unquote seizing control of an asset like artificial intelligence, remember what it could be used for good or for bad. And if it's at the state level, and again, you've got like here's Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, okay, all 600 pounds of him. Okay, that's great that he gets to monitor his AI resources at the state level. Ditto Gavin Newsom. But just remember, just because it's at the state level doesn't mean it can't be used for bad intentions, right? So I think why Trump wants to have the federal government centralize AI capability in the United States is for the good. It's for the bigger picture. Because if we don't harness it, and it really should be at the federal level because it's a new phenomenon, I think. I don't trust 50 governors to make the right decisions. Trump is one guy. I do trust him to make a good decision on it. So again, this is something that makes libertarians lose sleep at night because it centralizes a major asset in the world today. But you know, it's all about China. That's Trump's obsession, and we need to be the AI. We need to drive AI in the world. It can't be another country. It really can't. Even the Gulf states are coming to us to collaborate. You're better off gambling with an American president than you are the leader of a communist party in Beijing. It's really no more complicated than that, right? So that's my take on that, boss. You guys have a great day. It's a nice convo. Sorry, more you didn't talk. I wish you did, but I hope I made this stuff somewhat interesting for you. I hope you understand the components of this this bill, right? The big beautiful bill. If anybody wants the PDF, I have it. It's 47 pages. It's the summary from the House Ways and Means Committee. Chairman Jason Smith, a Republican from Georgia. All right, guys, you have a wonderful day and stay positive. Thanks for your time.
First off, let me convey to my family, friends, and supporters that now is not the time to gloat. We must remember that most of our left-leaning friends are good people who want the same things in life as we do, but simply think differently on how to get there. It is now time to be the bigger man, to extend an olive branch and unite all reasonable people of this great nation. God has blessed America, and together with President Trump, we will make America great again.